Between endless desert sands, a river of life flows. The Nile, Bumpel, the heartbeat of Egypt.
Its waters carried black soil, turning wasteland into fields of grain.
Along its banks, small villages took root, the Fumr, the seeds of a great kingdom. From scattered settlements, Memphis rose, the beating heart of a united Egypt. Narmer, the unifier, placed upon his head the double crown, Tzlip, symbol of one Egypt. For the first time, Upper and Lower Egypt stood as one. The pharaoh was no mere king, but son of the sun god Ra, ruling with divine authority.
His word was law, written not on parchment, but in the hearts of his people. Priests guarded the mysteries, keeping balance between gods and mortals.
Armed men watched over the Nile, ensuring Pharaoh's command was never questioned. In scrolls of papyrus, they kept accounts of harvests, taxes, and offerings. Before Pharaoh, all bent the knee, ubi fanj, subjects, priests, and warriors alike. Festivals filled with offerings bound the people to their gods. On sacred days, Pharaoh journeyed by river, a god among men.
His voice carried the weight of eternity. To disobey was to defy the gods themselves.
At Egypt's borders, soldiers stood as guardians of the land of Ra. From farmer to priest, all served Pharaoh's order, Tersinvlius, a chain of devotion and duty.
With Pharaoh at their head, Egypt strode toward eternity.
Pharaohs built stairways of stone, seeking a path to eternity.
Tens of thousands labored, sweat, rope, and willpower against mountains of stone.
Khufu's dream rose from desert sands, Silik, the Great Pyramid, eternal monument to his reign. Beside the pyramids, the Sphinx was carved, a silent guardian watching through the ages.
Deep within, chambers were filled with treasures, charms, and prayers for the afterlife.
To face eternity, pharaohs wore gold, masks of divinity to preserve their souls.
Temples of the sun aligned with heaven itself, binding the people to their gods.
In sacred symbols, they carved the voices of gods and kings into stone.
Priests became the living bridge between gods and Pharaoh. An army of thousands answered Pharaoh's call, protectors of his divine rule.
In war and peace alike, Pharaoh stood as god and general.
Crowned by priests, Pharaoh became not only king, but living God on earth. Victories were celebrated with feasts, offerings of plenty to gods and Pharaoh alike. On sacred days, Pharaoh walked not as man, but as God among mortals.
Justice flowed not from courts, but from the lips of Pharaoh himself, by the decree of the divine Pharaoh.
Through priests, the gods spoke Mund, their voices shaping the fate of kingdoms.
Pharaoh sat enthroned, eternal, immovable, godlike. With Pharaoh's power, Egypt strode unshaken into destiny. Here stood the first step pyramid, a stairway for Pharaoh to reach the gods. Tens of thousands labored,
binding their strength to Pharaoh's eternal dream.
Khufu dreamed a monument so vast it would defy time itself.
When finished, it stood as the tallest monument on Earth for 4 millennia. Beside the pyramids, the Sphinx kept its eternal watch. Within, secret chambers held the keys to Pharaoh's rebirth. Gold, charms, and sacred vessels, all carried into eternity. With stone shut tight, Pharaoh's body began its eternal journey. The boy king's mask, hidden for millennia, whispered of Egypt's eternal soul. Temples rose as stole hymns, prayers carved into eternity. Hieroglyphs carried voices of gods, etched forever into stone. Through sacred rites, Pharaoh's body was preserved, a vessel for eternity. In sacred art, Pharaoh sailed with Ra across the sky to be reborn. The boy king joined the gods, immortal in the underworld's embrace. Not all who entered came in reverence, mate. Some came to plunder Pharaoh's sleep. Priests invoked curses, binding Pharaoh's rest against defilers. For centuries, pharaohs slept undisturbed beneath their stone mountains. Their monuments endured, whispering the pharaoh's promise of eternity. Temples rose as the very houses of gods, carved in stone to last forever. They gave voice to the gods with hieroglyphs, sacred words etched in stone. At dawn, priests greeted Ra, the sun god, as he rose each. Through hymns and chants, mortals bridged the gulf between earth and heaven. Even Pharaoh bowed before the gods, making offerings to sustain divine order. Rameses the Great, warrior and pharaoh, led his armies into glory. At Kadesh, Egypt clashed with the Hittites in one of history's greatest battles. With unshaken will, Rameses II rallied his men and turned the tide. At day's end, neither side triumphed pure, yet Egypt stood unbroken. From war came peace, a synod, the first recorded treaty in human history. Egypt welcomed its warrior king as a god returned from battle. Feasts honored gods and pharaoh alike, blending victory with worship. Festivals of dance and chant bound mortals to gods in joy. Even the harvest was an offering, the Nile's gift given back to the gods. Sacred boats bore the gods along the Nile, uniting heaven and earth. Sacred flames carried prayers skyward, bridging mortal breath and divine spirit. Shield to shield, Egypt's soldiers marched as one. As sun set upon his reign, Pharaoh stood eternal Khofud, God among men. Even divine kings could not escape weakness and strife within. When the Nile failed, hunger spread, and with it, despair. Civil strife tore Egypt apart as faith in Pharaoh faltered.
Foreign powers pressed upon Egypt. Assyrians first among them. Persia claimed the Nile, and Pharaoh bowed before a foreign throne.
Then came Alexander, who claimed Egypt and founded a city in his name. At last, Rome's eagle flew above the Nile. Egypt became but a province.
The voice of pharaohs fell silent out, the divine crown abandoned. Time itself buried Egypt's grandeur beneath shifting sands. Centuries later, the sands parted Defies, and the voices of Egypt rose again.
Tutankhamun's tomb opened, dazzling the modern world with its untouched splendor. Treasures long buried revealed the wealth and wonder of pharaohs. Even today, their monuments rise untouched, eternal witnesses of human will.
The Sphinx endures afluned, a riddle carved in stone, watching eternity.
Their voices still whisper from the stones, names of gods, kings, and faith.
Through the Rosetta Stone, the world unlocked the lost language of the pharaohs.
Egypt's soul lives on, not only in stone, but in the memory of mankind.
The Nile still flows, carrying with it the eternal story of the pharaohs.